The Ontario Museum Association is pleased to welcome the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries. The Minister's portfolio covers $75 billion of Ontario's economy, the variety of which is shown in the Ministry's new name. The Ministry helps Ontario's economy through strategic support and investment, including by working with the tourism industry and regional tourism organizations to bring international investment, protecting cultural heritage resources, promoting the arts and creative economy, and supporting community projects and engagement. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Minister MacLeod safely traveled to every part of this province as part of the gradual reopening of Ontario for tourism, and she visited and showcased many community museums and our provincial institutions. As we all know, heritage, sport, tourism, and culture industries were among the first and hardest hit sectors and are expected to take the longest to recover from COVID-19. The Minister recently presented a strategic plan for her ministry on October 30th, which includes several initiatives for Ontario's tourism recovery. The Ministry will also be publishing a white paper and launching a consultation process in late November, with the plan released and costed by mid-winter. The OMA has both a strategic vision developed with the full engagement of Ontario museums and now its own white paper, Exhibiting Resilience, Empowering Ontario's Community Museums for Strategic Recovery, which offers recommendations to the Ontario government to support Ontario's museums in survival, recovery, and long-term sustainability in the period of regrowth instigated by the pandemic. We are particularly pleased to welcome the Honourable Lisa MacLeod to the Ontario Museum Association's Annual Conference 2020. Good morning, Minister.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's wonderful to see you again, second time in a week. And I'm looking forward to addressing folks for the next few minutes and, of course, taking your questions. The Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries boasts a spectacular double bottom line, as you've heard me say over the past year and a bit. And I was asked just last week why it was important for us to add heritage at the front of this ministry and industries at the bottom. And I think it exemplifies the terrific and spectacular double bottom line that we talk about. Everything this ministry does is reflected in every single community across Ontario, whether it's your museums, your public galleries, or your public libraries, in addition to those small tourism attractions, your local restaurant, and of course, our hotels, all amplified by the fact that we have sports and recreation. And if you love where you live and you are proud of your place and your people, I think that's really important. And that's what the drive was for us in this ministry. As Paul mentioned, our sectors were hit first, hardest, and will take the longest to recover. I know some of your museums have had a rough time reopening, and some still aren't. And so we are cognizant of that at the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, and we want you to not only survive, but certainly post-pandemic, we want you to thrive. And that's why the ministry is committed to a 5-year strategic plan. I released a lot of those details on last Friday at the Empire Club of Canada. But we will be engaging all of you. And I was proud to have Marie Lalonde as part of my ministerial advisory committee to help guide us through the pandemic and how we will move forward. But as I said, we have been dealing with a crisis, a triple threat. A public health crisis first and foremost, an economic crisis as a result of those shutdowns, and then now a social crisis. And so how do we build out? Instead of being the ministry that is dealing with crisis and the ministry of survival, how do we become who we really are, the Ministry of Hope? And so we will be engaging all of you over the next number of months to really refine that 5-year strategic plan. Some of the areas that we want you to be part of and we encourage you to be very creative on is looking at how do you create a tourism trail of heritage and museums across Ontario. We think you're the experts at that. We would love to hear your advice. How do we build up a more stronger digital presence here across Ontario? We started in the ministry with Ontario.live to curate a number of different assets throughout the province, but we want to do more. And our government has yesterday made a significant announcement to expand broadband across Ontario in rural places. So how do we support you on a go forward building out on that digital strategy? And I know many of you are suffering, and today the provincial government will release our budget and our plan, and this ministry will be well supported in terms of how we build and support community capacity. And I think there will be an opportunity for many of our museums across Ontario to access that. And just finally, I wanted to say that in my time as your minister over the past year and a bit, I've noticed that museum funding has remained relatively stable, and it's been difficult for museums that may have come up over the last few years to represent our very diverse communities has been a challenge. And so in the ministry, we are looking at that, and we are continuing to speak to our colleagues on the Treasury Board to get an acknowledgement that needs to be changed. And so I wanted to offer today my time and my commitment to all of you to succeed in a pandemic world and a post-pandemic world. And as the provincial budget lands today, we wanted to provide a couple of opportunities for each of you. So the first one is Marie Lalonde has been invited by the finance minister to participate in what's called a lockup, meaning she's going to receive the details of the budget before it's tabled in the legislature today at 4 o'clock. In addition to that, I'm inviting all of you to participate with me and our team at the ministry to watch the budget at 4 p.m. and I'll provide some closing comments afterward on how all of this flows together. And then finally, tomorrow I'll be hosting, I think, my 12th telephone town hall, and we will be joined by none other than the finance minister, Rod Phillips, to take your questions and to share your concerns. So I wanted to make sure that throughout this pandemic, I have been accessible and available to you, that when it was safe to do so throughout the summer, to travel to some of your most exquisite collections across the province. And I was able to do that in Cornwall and Brockville and in Belleville and so many other places across the province. And I want to make sure as we start to move out of this, that we are positioned to succeed. And again, many of you are small community museums that are telling your story of your local neighborhood, but don't discount how important that is, especially when we look at economic recovery and we're talking about hyper-local tourism. Your community museum today is so important to remind people of where they live and how that community was developed, but just as importantly, to provide that authentic tourism experience. And so with that, I want to say thank you to all of you. I know it's been very tough times. Many of you have adapted and pivoted to open your doors, and others I know are still struggling. So with that, Paul, I'm happy to take some questions. And again, just wanted to say how humbled and honored I am to be with you all today.
Thank you, Minister. It's an honor to have you with us today. And thank you too for those words of reassurance around museum funding, the long our annual operating grants, the community museum operating grant. That is certainly a question that is on the top of mind for many of our members. And if that has become something that your ministry is actually looking at, we are encouraged and certainly step up to the plate is to work with you to help make that program as responsible and responsive to the community as we can. Considering that the program right now, the CMOG as it's known for short, one concern that our members have expressed in the current time with COVID is the requirements and regulations for opening hours and other requirements that under the current restrictions they find difficult to meet. Can the ministry support the innovation that museums demonstrate in serving and connecting with their community through that program? What support would you be able to give us on this, just to assure our members that they won't be penalized next year?
Yeah, look, this is something we've been dealing with. You and I have spoken about this before across the entire ministry, whether it's our festivals and events that had to be canceled or postponed, sport hosting events that ended throughout the pandemic. And so what we have been working toward is working with Treasury Board as well as with the Auditor General to make sure that we can continue to flow money for sunk and eligible costs, and see if there's a way for us to best support you that way. So I'll have the ministry team look at that. It's certainly I was firm on the 12th of March and the weeks following that we would not be withholding funds from people, that if we could flow money out the door for sunk and eligible costs, that we would do that. So we wanted to front end that, and the ministry continues to work with all of our partners to make sure that they're in a position post-pandemic, as long as we're all following the rules that have been laid out by Public Accounts and the Treasury Board Secretariat.
Thank you, Minister. On another note, you certainly mentioned tourism. Big part of your ministry, big part of our lives is museums. And we're very much integrated in that overall process as part of our communities. And I'm just wondering, given that tourism sector has been hit hard, museums have been hit hard, how will your ministry ensure that museums are integrated into the overall tourism strategy? You mentioned the tourism trail, but I'm just wondering if you might be able to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we're now in a position, so I'm going to have one big strategy for the entire ministry, like it's a strategic vision, because you're all equal parts, and we're all part of tourism, we're all part of culture in some way, shape, or form. And so I think it's important that we put all of our moving parts together. And it's also important that I take a whole of government approach. For example, our fall fairs that were canceled this year are largely supported by OMAFRA, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. But, you know, they play into this hyper-local tourism that we're going to have to adapt to, which I think is going to present us with a tremendous opportunity. And you think of all of your local community museums, there's something in every part of Ontario where it was the first. There's something in every part of Ontario where we're proud of our people and we're proud of our place. What I'm challenging the tourism sector to do, and what I'm going to challenge you as well to do, is really look at your own backyard and look at what you can amplify for an experience for your local community. And I think when I grew up, I tell everybody, I grew up in a little town called New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. The ship Hector came over in the 1800s, or I guess in the 1700s, and I take my daughter to that museum when I'm allowed to, because we're not able to go into the Atlantic bubble, each and every year, so she can see that little slice of land, how it was developed. And I think when you look at Ontario, we have so much to contribute, so much to offer, whether that was the historic War of 1812 and the trail that we see, whether it's our Indigenous peoples who have provided so much to us. Every part of this province has a story to tell. And so I would encourage everyone on this call to look in your own community and see what else you can amplify, and work with your tourism operators to broaden that experience. Because over the next 18 months to 5 years, the new tourist is going to be somebody who lives in their own community and is reconnecting with their own community. And there could be no better time for our community museums to tell their stories than right now, because people are at home, and it's up to me to reconnect with the Nepean Museum and the Bytown Museum in the city of Ottawa. And some of the coolest things I saw this summer were in your community museums, and really amplifying that pride of people, pride of place.
Thank you for this discussion, Minister MacLeod. We look forward to working with you toward a strong recovery of museums as part of the museum's unfolding strategy. And particularly impressed, thank you, with your commitment to looking at funding programs, integrating museums, ensuring museums are well integrated into the province's tourism strategy. I take note of your comments, and I certainly take note of your passion when it comes to museums. We believe that they're very much the heart, the soul of our communities, and reflect who we are as people and where we're going as a society. So it's very important that we are able to work with you and the ministry to be able to make those goals unfold.